Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here, as always, with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, how are you doing, mate?
I'm all bad. Well, to be honest with you, mate, I was going to say I'm not bad, but last night didn't exactly inspire too many positive emotions, did it?
No, we may as well get straight into it. You know, I'm sure you've seen other reactions, you've heard other people. Danny Razza asked me to hop on a live stream with him. We just kind of spoke about the game last night, pretty raw. Just about the game, just having a general kind of footy chat, really. And I think, as it was just, we were briefly just mentioning off air, Dan, it was just Villa looked like and Dean Smith even said it was a very pre-season vibe to the game, which he clearly wasn't happy about. I think, first of all, we've got to give credit to Stoke for getting the job done. I think they knew what they had to do and ultimately didn't extend themselves more than they needed to. They got the goal from the set piece, and then they were always going to be looking to be tight at the back, playing with, a back five. But Villa didn't really challenge him that much, Dan. And I've seen quite a mixed reaction, and I'm sure you have as well. I'm sure, we've probably gone through all of these emotions ourselves last night. Some people saying how totally unacceptable it is, that it's a disgrace. I think we do need a bit of perspective, though, Dan. We've won all of our games up until this point, so that's always a good thing. Yeah, a cup run would have been really nice. Obviously, we made it to the final last year. There are bigger fish to fry, and to be honest, we probably could have done without the cup run last year. It's easy to say that with hindsight, but with what was going on with the fight for survival, maybe distracted Villa in some ways. If you make 11 changes like that against Stoke, and I don't want to accuse Dean of underestimating Stoke at all. I think, if anything, he's shown almost too much faith in the team that's got him that far. It's always going to be difficult, Dan, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. Look, it wasn't. I don't want to go. The team selection, I can understand. Look, 11 changes when we're one game against that kind of opposition away from a quarter final. To make 11 changes, it might seem a little strange, but that 11, and Dean also mentioned this in the press, did us so well against Bristol. It almost looked like two completely different sides. The fact it was the same players, sort of, if to the untrained eye, as I said, it almost looked like two different clubs altogether. We played without the same just sort of desire and creativity. And yeah, as I said, I don't think we necessarily underestimated Stoke. Just perhaps that I think the players failed to live up to the occasion, and I think this is potentially where not having fans in the ground hurts you most, because I think with fans there, it's a completely different game, and when you've got the fans sort of. And, occasionally you do need the fans to get on the players' backs and draw them forward and encourage them into to give them something a little bit more. And I think that's perhaps what we were missing yesterday. But it ultimately falls on the players and the coaching staff to reinforce the importance of the game and the significance of the game and just where this club could be 90 minutes after a win in the quarterfinals with, and you look at the teams and, there's still favourable, if we went and got a Brentford or someone like that in the quarterfinals, then a good performance against them, and before, you could be in the semis, and then, so there's still a good path. And look, as you say, this season is not about cup runs. I think we've done the League Cup justice for a season. I'm not exactly devastated to go out the competition. I think last season, getting to Wembley and stuff like that was amazing. I think the priority this season definitely has to be on establishing a more progressive finish in the league. But I think it was just not the fact that we've gone out of the competition, but just the manner of the performance. I don't want to get too carried away. I don't want to get too negative. I've seen yourself and a few of the Villa fans calling out some Villa fan accounts for some very hot takes, which I think were unfairly sort of targeting some players and stuff like that. And I don't quite buy into all of that. But Yeah, as I said, I think it was just the manner of the performance which upset most people, mate.
Yeah, I think as well with these kind of games, and you've got to look at the players who've played with such a history in the competition, and people always bang on about that, but winning the League Cup as many times as we have, getting so close last year, and with the players who have got us this far as well, there's very much this for me. If I was in that starting 11, I'd be looking at it very much like this is my time to leave a legacy at this club, because Henry Lansbury's been at the club for nearly 5 years and only played 50 games. So, if he plays his part and gets Villa to a League Cup final, potentially win the League Cup, obviously all if, buts and maybes, I'm sure he can look back on his time at Villa and go, do you know what? Yeah, I won the League Cup, got this far, whatever. There's a legacy there. And I think there's a clear sort of gulf in class between the first team and the team that played last night. That has to be addressed. And it is being addressed with signings that are being made. We don't just turn into Manchester City overnight. It doesn't work like that. And it's quite surprising to me how some Villa fans have reacted to that and have, also not been able to understand that 11 that played last night probably wouldn't even be anywhere near the top 6 in the Championship. So to play a mid-table Championship team who are unbeaten in 7, have only conceded, I think, 3 goals, Stoke, that's since the start of the season. I don't know. I think maybe Villa fans are getting a bit too carried away with our form in the start of the season. We've won 4 games. That's amazing. We should be happy about that. I'm absolutely not saying that we shouldn't, but I think perspective's needed on that, Dan. And I think just to briefly talk on the goal, and it's a frustrating one because it's from a set piece as well. It's not like we gave up too much in terms of chances for Stoke. It was foolish playing out of the back, got us into a situation where we gave up a corner. You've got 3 players who were marking Sam Vokes. The main man was Gilbert, which, I mean, that should tell you everything. I think even if the performance wasn't as good, I think it's just things like this where we spoke about on the podcast before. If you iron out these inconsistencies on the set plays, you're very much in the game. And Villa could have found themselves in with a penalty shootout potentially. Ultimately, I think we got what we deserved, Dan. But I think sometimes players need to take responsibility on the pitch to change things up, or potentially go against the grain, because I'm very against zonal marking, and if anything, it's proved it, the fact that Gilbert's matched up against Vokes. Sometimes it takes someone to go, I'm going to pick him up, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go make that challenge, just to maybe step out of line of what Dean's asking, for a second, but ultimately for the better good of the team.
Well, that's what I think, mate, and I think that's what, without sort of slipping back into the doom and gloom of sort of our podcast last season. It does feel a little bit like that, doesn't it, mate?
Almost.
The word is responsibility, and you said it there, mate. And I said it just a few minutes ago, where I think that there is an onus on the players in situations like that, and where players have to take responsibility for the game itself, and showing up and dispatching of that opposition. And I was saying this to my mates yesterday. I was like, there wasn't exactly a golfing class between the 2 11s yesterday. No. Ours was better, yes, and we still had some good players in there. The likes of Traore was playing, El Ghazi, and whilst he didn't have the best game, there was still some good players out on that pitch, really, players that have done well in the past, or hopefully are going to do well for Villa. But there was a lot to like, from a lot of players I thought played well for Stoke, and they have a very clear and rigid way of playing under Martin and so Michael O'Neill. Getting confused between my O'Neills then you don't want that. But know that they played very well. They operated a game plan, and you have to credit them for that, because what he's done at Stoke, O'Neill, is so different to what Nathan Jones failed to do, and you can see the sort of backbone and the steel that he's instilled, and a very sort of sorry, Jack, if you're listening, I know it's a Stoke fan, but a very Stoke way of playing, so to speak. And they operated that to perfection last night. But I think there is an onus on the players, and as just to use that word again, mate, responsibility, whereby you have to go. We are Aston Villa. We have a chance to be in a quarterfinals again, where from an outside, if Villa went and achieved a sort of 12th, 13th place finish in the league this year, Villa fans would see that as a resounding success. I don't know about you, mate, but I'd be absolutely delighted by that. But from the outside looking in, it's fairly unremarkable for most other Premier League fans. And so, if you achieve another cup run or something like that, and you go out and say in the quarterfinals we got a bit unlucky with the draw and we went and pulled off a giant killing or something like that, and it just adds a little bit of excitement to what could otherwise be perceived as a slightly mundane season. And look, mate, it's what it acted as for me is I was just so delighted we didn't go down last season, because that game is probably what we would have been seeing if we were in the Championship. That kind of 11 against a team playing that kind of football, and it just smacked me of the Championship. Like, teams come to Villa Park looking to steal a goal off a set piece or stuff like that, and then setting up two banks of four with playing a deep block, literally on the edge of their own penalty box at times. And Villa just sort of not peppering the goal, but not even really getting that close, just sort of failing to navigate that sort of defensive setup. And mate, look, I think I don't want to rattle it home too much, because, as you say, mate, we are the positivity filler over here, and no matter what, we always try to put a positive spin on things. But no, I'm happy that if that's the kind of performances we were going to get out of the League Cup, I'm happy to leave that tournament there.
Yeah, I think the defeat could have come in a much more embarrassing manner, as you kind of touched on there. The 2-11s weren't that far apart, really. The game wasn't particularly an exciting one. I actually found it quite difficult to follow, to be honest, because it was just dull. But yeah, I think whatever's said there is best left in the past, and we should get on to some hopefully more positive news, because you will have all seen the thumbnail, you'll have all seen the news and the title. Aston Villa have been linked, according to Alan Nixon, to a high-profile striker. Now, obviously, the rumour has come from John Terry commenting on Diego Costa's Instagram post saying, "Take me home, captain, take me with you." And it's kind of snowballed from there. Villa Twitter went into a meltdown a few days ago. Marca have reported it in Spain. I'm not entirely sure on their credibility. Dan, you know a lot more about the Spanish press than I do. But just seeing it reported in the nation he's representing and playing in is encouraging, I want to say. I think there's some very differing opinions on the signing of Diego Costa. It would undoubtedly, though, be a real statement of intent, Dan.
Yeah, it's a funny one. This is one that sort of, as you say, we did a transfer rumour mill a little while back on Higuain and Cavani. Do you remember that? And that was exciting. And this sort of it's a bit pie in the sky. But look, I mean, to be honest with you, mate, if it had come last season, it wouldn't have surprised me that much, because Atletico didn't have a good season last year. It was sort of borderline Simeone potentially looking like his time was done, because what a manager he's been for Atletico, but it sort of was looking like he'd come towards the end of his cycle, and just like anything, eventually, you just need that change, and especially with the way that Simeone plays, I think things can often get a little bit stale when you're watching Atletico. But I watched him the other day. They played Granada at home, which might not sound like too difficult a game, but for people that know Spanish football, Granada have just made the Europa League. That they came up, and they're a real tough. They're sort of like and Atletico B, they sort of play a very similar aggressive style of football. So Granada is a tough game against two very similar styles. And Atletico just were let off the lead, and it was such an exciting performance. They beat them 6-1. Diego Costa scored. Suarez came off the bench, assisted and scored. João Felix scored. And suddenly Diego Costa looked like the striker that we were seeing at Chelsea. There was a quote he gave after the game when I was watching the presses, which I really liked, on a potential front two between him and Suarez. He said, "It's a great partnership. One of us bites and the other one kicks." And I really like that. And it's that is all you need to know about that front two. And it does seem like what a menacing partnership that is. But that he might have found a companion in Suarez. But let's not forget that there does need a place in that 4-4-2 system for João Felix to be introduced permanently to the system. He's sort of been not a bit part player, but he hasn't nailed down a spot yet in that 11. And there comes a point in a player like his development where he needs to be playing consistently, and it needs to be the man. And we're seeing all around the world that players like Haaland, Mbappe, you don't need to be sort of old and a veteran striker to be the go-to guy. If you're young enough, if you're good enough, you can play that role, and Felix needs to do that. And it could potentially mean with Suarez coming in that Costa is sort of pushed to the bench maybe a little bit, and he doesn't strike me as the sort of guy that's happy to sort of sit on the bench and come on for 10-20 minutes at the end of the game. And is there a part of me that thinks he'd like a final swan song in the Premier League? Yeah, I think there is.
It's a weird one because you all know what Diego Costa's about. We've all seen him. He is a very Marmite striker. You love him or you hate him. He's the kind of wind-up merchant that I think the Premier League needs. Like the Premier League has such a clean image. No one really speaks out of turn. Everyone's this, but when every once in a while, a Jose Mourinho pops up, a Diego Costa pops up, people with real personalities and attitudes. And I think Morpay is probably one that's popping up. I think he has been memed a lot for his sort of crying celebration after the penalty. Brighton eventually went on to lose. It's very funny, but I think some respect needs to be put on these players. They're putting on a show at the end of the day, and their personalities, and they kind of make it more interesting. I think there is a fine line that Costa teeters on with being this character and just being aggressive for the sake of aggression, where we've seen him get so many stupid yellow and red cards. He's up in the referee's face. He's very angry, and I think it's something you'd want to see your own team do. But the minute you see an opposition player do it to you, like Morpay, the stamp on McGinn, obviously that's not a character, that's just a dickhead move. But ever since then, Morpay has been the antagonist of every fixture between Brentford and Villa and Brighton and Villa. Villa fans, first thing they tweet about is Morpay, how much they hate him. And it just adds a bit of spice to it, really. My thing with Costa, and I'm so excited about his potential transfer, is what it means for Ollie Watkins. Because, we spoke the other night, Dan, after Fulham, about his movement and how, he was unlucky not to come away with a goal, and how clearly frustrated and bothered it was, which I think is a good thing. But Ollie was trying too hard at the end of the day. Now, I think, as you kind of touched on there as well, Costa's not going to want to play second fiddle to anyone. And I don't think Watkins would either, because, he could have quite easily have gone to a Fulham, West Brom, even stayed at Brentford, played regular football week in, week out. And we undoubtedly need cover up front. And this is going to sound really weird saying it. I think Diego Costa's too high profile for that kind of competition and what the expectation of the signing brings and what it means for the squad, and just kind of keeping that dressing room happy and balanced. Because, as I say, Diego Costa is going to expect to play most games. He's been very prolific in the Premier League. So it's fair for him to assume that or want the reassurances of playing first team football. I just worry what it may do to the squad.
Well, look, I think this one, I think it is a little bit too high profile. I don't think it's necessarily, he's now so used to playing in it's been a long time since he's played in a 4-3-3 as well, because obviously you have you take his time at Atletico. Well, obviously, as I was saying, it's a lot of 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1, and then you take it back a step further to when he was playing at Chelsea under Conte, and he likes his 3 and 5 backs, and sort of he's very staple in that way of playing. So it would take a little bit of time to. But look, mate, I think we're seeing that Villa are still hunting for this final striker, and I think a striker is important because, as I was saying yesterday, I think Keenan Davis desperately needs a loan. Yeah. I think he needs to find that that goal scoring instinct that will complete him as a striker. I think he's got a lot else, and I think his all round game is good, and we always speak very highly of him on that podcast. But he just needs to discover that killer instinct, and I don't even think it necessarily needs to become prolific.
No,
I don't think he needs to go away to the Championship and have a 20-25 goal season. Just so he understands where the back of the net is against teams that aren't Burton Albion, and he just sort of just gets some confidence in him, which I think is the most important thing. And I think Keenan deserves that opportunity to go out on loan. And I think with Wesley not just coming back for so long, but it's going to be, I think at least December, January before we see Wesley. I mean, he's not going to come back into the first team and hit the ground running, bless him. It's going to take, another few months for him to sort of get back up to match sharpness, which is completely different. Get the fish to match fitness, and sort of discover his place in the team again and adjust to all these new players around him and everything like that. So whilst we're looking at a December, January return for Wesley, if you're looking at when I think we're going to see him hitting the back of the net again, perhaps like February, March time, before he's back playing his best. So I think we will see another striker coming in. I think it might potentially be another loan.
I wouldn't be against a loan for Tammy. I know that's a very sort of bait. We've had Tammy on loan before. Should have bought him maybe. I don't know. I just think for what you get from Tammy, we know he's got goals in the Premier League. We know he's clearly not in favour at Chelsea. And I think he, albeit, rotating with Watkins or maybe even having Watkins on the left, there's some tactical adjustments that can be made. I think Tammy would still get more games at Villa competing with Watkins than he's going to at Chelsea in the Carabao Cup,
Well, this is the thing, mate, is I think we need variation in our strikers.
Yeah.
I think we can't have... We need someone that can add a different dimension or a different element. And I think that's where we need to be aiming in terms of our recruitment. It is looking down the route for someone that Ollie Watkins hold-up play is great, but just adds a bit more of a physical presence, a bit more height, a bit more of an aerial threat, and just so you can alternate, not only depending on our position, but we spoke about this on the podcast last week, where in terms of whereby Villa don't have a plan B necessarily, and I think this was potentially one of the problems last night, is that we just don't have a way to mix it up, and whereby if sort of the Dean Smith setup isn't working, we don't have something to necessarily turn to, which sort of adds completely turns the game on its head, and Villa become a completely different beast. We don't have that, and I think with the striker being the real spearhead of a team like Villa, where we're trying to score goals, I think it does ultimately start with that. And so I think we do need something that's necessarily a little bit different, that can add goals. There's potentially a little bit older, more experienced, that can help nurture Ollie Watkins and Keenan Davis, as you were saying, mate. And so, let's hope we see another deal done.
Hopefully, I'm sure Villa will keep that quiet. The Ross Barkley thing came pretty, quietly as well. I think there was obviously the whispers. It kind of leaned more to it being Loftus-Cheek. I know we spoke about Loftus-Cheek as well, Dan, and how we would have liked him. Obviously, over the moon with Barkley. I'd just like to say as well in the podcast, I got the transfer fee and dates wrong. Now, I did have them written down, but I actually read from my Diego Costa notes. He joined in 2014-2015 season for 30 million. I looked at the wrong fees. So for you guys calling me out in the comments, absolute, that's fair game. We do try and rush and fit these podcasts into busy schedules. So I know most of you were very understanding. There was a few people give me a bit of grief. So I just thought, we'd clear that up. I was reading the wrong notes basically. But finally, Dan, as we move on, we've obviously got Liverpool on Sunday, Super Sunday. It's going to be a very difficult game. And listen, I think Villa, obviously we've kind of touched on it in the podcast. We've done so well at the start of the season. I don't think we've still got out of first gear, which is a good thing when you can still beat teams like Fulham and Sheffield United, not, at 100% necessarily. But not so good when you've got the champions coming up on Sunday. It's going to be a very tough game, Dan. Obviously, we cannot underestimate them. It's going to be really interesting to see how someone like Matty Cash copes with Sadio Mane. Obviously, we may see Ross Barkley, former Everton. So, there's a bit of spice in that midfield. If he starts, he, will feel like he's got a point to prove against, his bitter enemies, as he's a toffee himself. It's going to be a very interesting game, and I'm going to predict it's going to be a very hard one to watch for the fans, Dan.
Mate, we can't, it's one of those whereby you sort of, I'm really not exactly looking forward to this one. I love watching Liverpool play, I really, really do, but I can't say I like watching them play against the Villa. But last season, with a far inferior team, we put in some decent performances. And, I think whilst I do hate to say that, considering we came away with no points. I'm always very hesitant to sort of mark any loss down as a good performance, because I think that that's the sort of sign of a smaller club mentality, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
You need to be judging yourself with points when you're Aston Villa, especially when you're on the potential trajectory. That one's tough to say. The Villa are. And so, look, I think it's going to be a very tough game. We have to be perfect in the way that we try and play through the thirds and operate with that Liverpool press and the intensity of it. There was a couple of times against Fulham where we looked a little bit sloppy coming out from the back, and we allowed Fulham onto us, and we can't do that against Liverpool. We can't have that period in the second half that we were talking about, where between about 60 minutes and about 55 minutes to about 70 minutes, it was pretty much all Fulham. Martinez was having to make a few saves. They had a disallowed goal. We can't allow that period where we just sort of sink and regress into our own half, because we can't be playing backs to the wall football, because Liverpool are just too good. They will break you down, they will break you, and they will score goals against you. I think you do have to take the game to them. But look, they showed frailties against Arsenal. Arsenal very easily could have won that game if Lacazette wasn't insisting on chipping the world's best goalkeeper. Then they at least come away from a point from Anfield. And so, it's not... I don't think they're necessarily the machine that they were this time last season. And I thought until about December, January, I thought they were going to go invincible. I really, really did. They were just this winning machine, and whilst they didn't go and win games 5 or 6-0 like the Centurion City team did of a few years ago, they just found a way to win no matter what. And the game at Villa Park is a perfect example of that, whereby they just find a way to win. They don't stop. I think it was like 88th minute they equalised, and 91st minute they scored. And whilst it was painful for a Villa fan, I mean, that just encapsulated everything that Liverpool were at that time last season. I don't think they're that necessarily this sort of completely imperious, perfect outfit that they were. I think they were a bit easier to score against this season. I think Leeds have shown that. Arsenal, they lost to Arsenal yesterday. I know
Carabao.
it was our season, but Liverpool weren't great. And so, look, it's one of those where what a way to measure ourselves, what a way to see how far we've come, and just to go and make a statement, because we have turned a few heads this season with the fact that we've won our opening 2 games, both with a clean sheet. And if we can, just go and put in a good performance, and who knows, get a point or something like that, and just again, just what a yardstick to show how how far Villa have come, and see how these signings can integrate themselves against probably the best club team in the world, not called Bayern Munich.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult one, because when you look at Liverpool, and obviously I'm not understating how lethal they are at all, because they are frightening. And we all saw that last season, in person for the first time. We're really seeing a proper Klopp team down Villa Park, what they're actually like. And it is very different to just kind of watching it on TV and seeing. You see so much more in terms of the work rate and the effort that they put in, which is going to be important for Villa if they're going to look to match that. I think, this is contradictory to what you say, but I think the way you beat Liverpool is you let them have possession, because ultimately when you're on the ball, they hunt you down. They're aggressive in their press. And I think if you let them have the ball, let them do the work, try and hit them on the counter. I think we saw at Anfield as well during the restart, Villa didn't have a lot of possession and Liverpool looked very vulnerable on the counter-attack. A much better side would have got at least a draw from that game. But I think Villa made a good account of themselves in that game. We've obviously done a podcast on that before, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But it's going to be interesting to see how Villa line up. And as you say, a very good yardstick for what we've done, because we've kept, as you say, 2 clean sheets. I think it's important to keep the deficit down, not only for the defence, but just, in terms of goal difference. I think Leeds have been conceding so many, and people... and in some instances, rightly so, are waxing lyrical about how good they're doing. They're conceding a hell of a lot of goals. Now, if let's not kid ourselves, we're going to be in a situation where we're potentially fighting relegation. We can't rule that out yet, although we do sit in 10th place, I believe. We can't rule that out. We just can't. And it's important that, as I say, we keep that deficit down, because the goal difference is what saved us last year, pretty much. So, as long as Villa put in a full-blooded performance, it's going to be a very good test against, second best team in the world, as you said there, Dan. And hopefully, we can come back, Dan, with another positive podcast about how well we did against, the current champions. I think that's probably a good note to end this podcast on, Dan.
For sure.
It's been a pleasure, as always, speaking with you and, recording the podcast for you guys. Let us know in the comments below what your thoughts were on last night's game. If you're dwelling on it too much, just let us know. Also, what you think about Diego Costa, because, definitely one that's going to split opinions of fans. And let us know your predictions for the Liverpool game. We're very interested to see them. So if you enjoyed this content, hit the like button, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more. And up the Villa. It's the main man, a hero. He's the main leader of the gang. Chester.